Hello everyone, my name is Andrew. Today we'll continue learning IT, and today we'll talk about open and closed parts of your system and why is it so important. So let's start. Well, in IT we have lots of parts in our system. So imagine that we have our banking app. We have our app, we have our database, we have our cache, and we have lots of things. But what are closed and open parts of our system? Why are they so important? Because basically you're going to use them anywhere. If you're building rockets, if you're building Android applications, if you're building iOS applications, if you're working in backend, in data analytics, anywhere in IT, you're going to use open and closed parts of your systems. So now let's talk about them. Here I have my example. I have my actor, my user, I have my banking app, and I have my database. So banking app talks to the database, but let's imagine that database is open to the internet. So both the app, so the API of that app and database are open to the internet. And what can happen? Our user, our actor, can connect to the database just like this, without using our banking app at all. So we connect to the database straight away. And why is that a problem? Because database is a closed part of our system. If I can connect to the database just like this, so directly, without ever talking to the bank app or some other interface, what's going to happen is that I can change my information with simple SQL queries or some other queries depending on the database. So what can happen? If I can connect to the database without connecting to the banking app, I can say, okay, increase my balance by $10 million. Because I can connect to the database, I can change the data. And that's really important because database is a closed part of your system. Database should never be usable by other users in the internet. It should be only available to the banking app or other services within your company or within your team. And that's just one example on how to use open and closed systems. So database should always be closed and only available to your banking app. If I can only access my database through my banking app or some other interface, I can only change the things that developers want me to change. So I cannot say increase my balance by 10 million because banking app will not allow me to do that. Just that simple. So you always have closed and open parts of your system. In our case, banking app is an open part, while database is a closed part. We cannot access the database, but we can access the banking app. And banking app can access the database because it's within our system. Those are our applications. So we are a bank and those are our applications. And now let me give you some other examples. So imagine that we have our some Python file. So let me create main.py. And here, what we have here is some class user. So we have our user. And then inside of that user, I have my secret ID. So let's imagine that that secret ID is used in order to, to encode encrypt our user or encrypt our password. So that secret ID should be immutable, so not changeable. And it should never be used outside of that user class. So basically, we only use that variable inside of our user. What can happen is that, so let's say we have secret ID and username. Username is our open part. So username is just a variable that we can use anywhere. We can change it, we can remove it, we can create it, we can do whatever. But our secret ID is our closed part, which is a UUID4. So basically a random string. That's basically a random unique string. So I think you know what UUID is. A random string. That's it. And let's say that we create our new user test. And what can happen in our system? Because when we're talking about actors who access our database directly, we're talking about hackers. So a hacker accessed our database and changed some information within it. And then we have some problems with our balances or we have some other problem. But open and closed parts of your systems are not only related to hackers, they're related to the programmers themselves. Why is that? Because here I have my user class. And imagine I'm working within a team. So our team consists of 2 people, me and my friend. And my friend doesn't know that secret ID should only be used within our user. And he does something like that. User, secret ID, hello. Or something like that. Or some secret ID. And what's the problem? The problem is that my friend used a closed part of the system outside of that scope, outside of that system part scope. So my class user should only use that secret ID because secret ID is created inside of that user. But here on 15th line, we used that secret ID, we changed it outside of the scope of that secret ID. Why is it bad? Because once again, as I said, secret ID can be used in some password hashing or can be used in some encryption or can be used somewhere where we don't need to actually access it. So that is really, really bad. And as you can see, in the first case, that was the hacker that accessed our database. But in the second case, our closed system was accessed by our own friend. That's not really a problem if we fix it, but it can be a problem. Because when we're using different libraries, different modules, we may often use some code that we don't really need to. So in Python, if you're working in Python and you have a variable that starts with an underline or two underlines, that means that that variable is private or protected. So basically you should never use it. Never ever use it. Because that variable is, should never be used outside of that system. And if you see something like that, or if you see a function that is, create user that starts with underscores, that means that you're using a closed part of your system, a closed method, a closed function, a private thing. And you should never do that because you can break some code. So as I said, if our secret ID hashes our users and then we change that secret ID, some problem can happen. We may make our users unavailable. We may expose our user passwords to some hackers, or we can do something. So basically the whole idea of that video is to tell you that you should always use different layers and you should always know what are the open and closed parts of your systems and how to use them. If you're talking about Django, in Django we have a very, very great example. So I think most of you are familiar with Django and you know about Django administration page. So Django admin. Why is it such a great example? Because 90% of Django projects do not close their admin panel. So it's open to anyone. If you go to some website that uses Django, then it's probably its admin is probably open. Why is it so important? Because if your admin is open to the internet, just like here, so database was open, but now admin page is open to the internet. Anyone, so hackers, different users, different entities can go into that admin page and do some bad stuff with it. So basically, if I know my username and if I know my password, I can go to that admin page and delete the whole database or do something else. Why is that so important? Well, yeah, because if I can access your admin page outside of your company, outside of your team or your project, I can break your project within minutes because I can delete everything, I can add some users info, or I can just copy your data. And data is really, really important. Imagine I know all the personal data of millions of users. What's going to happen? Well, nothing good is going to happen. That's why you should always close Django admin, because Django admin is a closed part of your system. You close it because only your company, only your team should be able to access it within your company, within a building, or in some other way. So use a VPN, use a tunnel, use anything you want, or just close that admin completely. Another example in Django as well is views, models, ORM, services, all that thing. Well, we talked about services in the previous video. Basically, you have a service that allows you to access your database without accessing it in views directly, because views are responsible for request-response interactions. So we get a request, we do something with it, we return our response. And as you can see here, we only use model product, well, because Django has us to, well, we need to use it because Django, it won't work if we don't do it here, but we don't really need to do that in better frameworks, if I can say it like this. So basically you have a view that is responsible for request-response interaction, and then you have a service. And a service allows you to execute your business logic, in our case, query some data, create some products, create some users, delete some users, log into some accounts, or do something else. And that is another open-close relationship inside of your project, because your views cannot access your product or your database directly. They can only access it through your service, the service that you wrote. So basically, product, so that Django model is a closed part of your system if you look at services and views. Service is an open part, and view uses that open part in order to change or update some closed part. In our case, the database, so models, ORM, and all that. If we even look at ORM or object relation mapping, so this allows us to remove SQL from our project completely. So we don't write SQL. Why is that? Because SQL is a closed part of our system. We don't use that language inside of our Django projects because we have our ORM. That ORM allows us to close SQL and only use our public part. So we only use ORM. ORM is a public thing in our Django project. SQL is a closed thing, and ORM allows us to access that SQL, so access that part of our project indirectly through that ORM. And the more wares you have, the more, well, not always, but the more wares you have, the better your project is going to be. Of course, it's a little bit different. You don't need to add millions of wares, but if you have only one layer, so you're using views, you're using database, you're using responses, requests, you're using everything in one place, like in a view or somewhere else, then that may be a problem. But if you have different layers, if you segregate your responsibilities, just like you do it here, you have a banking app, you have a database, banking app is responsible for the database interaction, database is not open to the whole world, then it's probably going to be better. The same goes for your user class. If you have a private variable, in other languages you can just write private. So for example, in Java you can write private integer secret ID or private string secret ID, but here you can only use underscores. So if you have a private variable or you have private functions, you have protected things in your class or in your module, in your application, then it's probably going to be better than if everything is open. Because you probably have different parts of your system, and try to find those parts and try to close everything that you don't really need to use publicly. That's the idea of that video. So my name is Andrew. I hope you get that idea. I hope I explained everything well. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel. If you have any other questions, leave them down in the comments, because that video is kind of about everything, but it is what it is. We have open and closed systems anywhere. So for example, if you look at a car, I cannot access my engine. Well, I can do it, but I will not access my engine if I'm sitting in a car. I will use a steering wheel and the pedals to drive my car. I will not use the engine directly. I will not touch it. That's how it works. So thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, leave a like, and bye-bye.